Welcome to Deep Cut Chiefs Podcast, Episode 2. Hopefully, there was music playing when this podcast launched. Because last time, for whatever reason, there's little music things in here in the studio, and I pushed it, hoping that that music would play and everyone would be able to hear it. But nothing came out when we put it on YouTube. So, and I don't have the editing skills to add music. So,
You were way less committed on your dancing just now. Like
Yeah.
last time you were like, but this time pretty muted,
Yeah. Well,
but still
let me
awesome.
tell you why. Because Jace was like, "Dad, that was so cringy." So one of our like 40 views of this podcast was my son, and he's like, "Dad, can you be less cringy? Like you were dancing with no music." And I'm like, "I don't know if I can, son."
Oh, Jace, just embrace your father. This-
So
We
we did.
also
Go ahead.
go. Yep. So the first podcast went out last week. We had one comment from a mutual friend. Shout out Brooke Fremo.
Yeah, do you wanna go into it? Like, it was a su I love Brooke Fremont. It was a super mom comment, like, super encouraging. "You guys are gonna do great. I can't wait to follow your experiences," and I just loved it. It made me feel good. So, hashtag we love you, Brooke Fremo.
Yeah, so being the first, you get the extra love. I have an amazing Brooke Fremo story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Um, so after I retired the Air Force and we moved out to Gilbert, we went over to her house one time. It was really nice. She had kind of like a farm going, but anyway, she had a lot of animals, goats and stuff running around, so she's very familiar with animals. So the next time I saw her, she came come over to our house, and I had this pit bull Teddy, and Teddy had this bump on his ear. And she's looking at this bump and she's like thinking about it. And I know she wants to say something about it, but she starts massaging it and she bursts this thing on my
Oh.
dog's ear.
Oh.
And she doesn't know Teddy from Adam. It was like we're at a party, we're drinking wine, and she's got dog juice all over her.
Yeah.
Poor Brooke. She's such a sweet
Thanks.
lady.
Oh, but hey, out of anyone I know, like the Fremos, her and her husband Jay, like they have the biggest hearts. They've adopted kids from all over the place, and yeah, I don't know of a family that distributes love more than them. So they are definitely good peeps.
Yeah, nice dudes.
Yeah, nice dudes. Yeah, so what's been going on? It's been a week since we did our first podcast. So what's new in your life, Kyle?
What's new is first uh I would call it a week, maybe. I've done some time at the new job, the old hobby airport. That's boring. We don't have to talk about that at all. Um, let's see what else. Pelotoning like crazy. I know you're on a
Nice.
new fitness cycling kick, so that's worthy of discussion too. Hashtag fitness. And so, what's up? You're getting your splats on, aren't you?
Yeah, splats. Wow, how do you know that? That's
Look at
interesting. Did you ever do Orange Theory?
no, it's out of my price range. I'm just a normal
The guy that
person.
has a Peloton. Hashtag, have you ever read that thing? What I'd rather spend my money on than Peloton?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
epic Twitter
yeah,
threads.
yeah. So, yeah. So what's new with me is I put on some LBs after the old retirement and maybe the additional COVID that happened. And so moving, like, we can get into this because, like, moving to a new city, like, even though my bro is here, he's like 50 miles away. And I do believe the number one thing that helps you get to the gym is a workout partner, right? Accountability is
Yeah.
the number one thing. And so I've been struggling for a few months, like, I can do it on my own. I can do it on my own. And then I just broke down and decided, you know what? Since I'm making friends around here, but not anyone that is like, hey, do you want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to work out with me? Like, we're not there yet. So I've
I don't even wanna work out at 5 o'clock in the morning,
do
buddy.
you remember our epic Stairmaster battles?
I do.
Yeah, like literally we would battle like I, to get to so many floors in the least amount of time. And one time, like I put up 200 floors in a certain amount of time. Like let's just say I can't remember the times, but like 15 minutes. And Kyle was like, "Dang!" And then he went and did 200 floors in like 12 minutes, beat it by 3 minutes. The next time, I'm like 11 minutes, and like. by the end of it, I mean, basically we're hanging off the thing. It's running at full speed, and people are like, "Are you okay?" As you're trying to go up the treadmill, just trying to get to 1 second less than the next guy.
Yeah, nothing makes you grosser than one of those old school actual stairmasters, and plus you're like super high, you're tall, and so everybody in the gym can see you. So I mean, you are on display, so your form can't suck. You're just glistening like a Roman god out there.
Oh, it's so gross. It's puddles of sweat on those stairs, but
Oh
it
yeah,
is legit. Yeah. So I signed up for Orange Theory. That's what I'm doing. Hashtag veterans. They gave me a discount, so that's cool. But here's a like this was cringy for my son last time. He's like, "Quit saying hot take," but here's a hot take. So take that, Jace. Uh, it's not like 95% women in there.
oh
So yeah, I have no idea, and I'm okay with it. Like women are usually much like easier to work out with. Not for what most men would think, but they're like more accepting. They're more like they ain't judging you. They ain't like any weird looks. They're just in their mouth breathing, just like everyone else. So, but I've done it for 2 days now. So it's quite a streak. I'm trending in the right direction, as we say.
veteran,
Uh, but I do feel like I want to vomit right now. So if there shouldn't be any letdown on this podcast because I'm bringing it. Hashtag
nice.
full up, maximum effort. Hashtag. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's how I feel right now. And my beautiful bride made me a green smoothie to deal with it. So that's new in my life. I'm repping my Kunsan jersey today. Uh, yeah, Kyle didn't bring his, but it wasn't like we said we were going to wear.
yeah. I'm kind of just going with the keeping the theme, repping Texas. I got my Astros hat on, so keeping it H.
Yeah, H Town. So yeah, so that's what's new in my life. There's a lot of good things going on at work, and trying to put some structure to this podcast. We really enjoyed last time how it was kind of conversational, and so I sent Kyle a video this week. It's something I'm doing with at work. Like if you don't remember, or you know what, this could be your first time listening. Like uh, you could have listened to the first one. This could be your first time jumping in. I work at Rice University, dealing with the leadership and talent development. So how do we upgrade everyone? And so some things I'm working there. Yeah, they take over my life. And I sent Kyle a video. It's by David Foster Wallace. We'll put a link to it in the comments. It's called "This Is Water." And I thought it would just be a nice transition to get us into some deep cut leadership stuff. So quick overview. It's David Foster Wallace who he wrote a bunch of books that are a billion pages. You can Infinite Jest. You can go read all those if you want, or you can watch this 10-minute video that's going to be linked. But the video is him giving a commencement speech at a university, and it's actually the video I sent you is only about 10 minutes, Kyle, but the commencement speech is 22 minutes. But someone afterwards took this 10-minute part and made a video to it. So there's actors kind of walking through what he's talking about. And so he kind of walks through something that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to: the day in and day out. And I'll start off with this. He starts off with a kind of a funny little joke. He says there's two younger fish swimming, and an older fish swims by and says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And the two fish keep swimming on, and the other fish looks to the other younger fish and says, "What the hell is water?" And so it's a nice lead into what he's talking about the things that are invisible to us, but that are so important. What do you think? What comes to your mind when you think of that kind of little story there, Kyle?
The very first thing that comes to my mind is Air Force Wallpaper. So we used to talk about it, and let's see, the shop. When you get to a new place, this is the way that it always has been. This is the way that it is. And we used to call that Air Force Wallpaper. So, so what it looks like is you go in, everything looks the same. Everybody's got the same junk on their desks. Everything looks the same, and everybody's work centers. It's basically a carbon copy of everything, and no one can see any different because they've got their Air Force wallpaper. They don't know, or we don't know, that anything should be different because this is just the way that it is. So that's when I first started the video. That's immediately what came to mind. Loved the video because it's, first of all, it's super easy to digest, very accessible. So it just, it was awesome.
Yeah, actually, as you were talking, that made me think of another video, but super relevant here. It's called the three beeps video. How fast culture can be assimilated, and like what you're talking about. Um, Pretty soon, you don't. It's like the problem. Like when you get into an organization, you see all of the problems, and within a month, you don't see them anymore because you're assimilated, right? Like that
Right.
broken glass, you just don't see it anymore because it's amazing how fast we fall into culture. And so the three beeps video, have you seen that before?
I
It's
haven't.
a doctor's office. I can walk us through it. It's a doctor's office, and there's all actors except for one. One lady is actually there for a doctor's appointment, and so at random times, a beep goes off, and all of the actors stand up. And like the lady's looking at her, like, why are these people standing up? And then another beep goes off, and they sit down. Then another beep goes off, and they all stand up. And the lady's like, "What is going on with all these people?" And the beep goes off, and they sit down. Third beep goes off. What does this lady do?
She doesn't.
She stands up.
No.
It took three beeps for her to get assimilated into this. She has no idea what's going on. That's not the best part. So they have it pulled where the actors start getting called back, and there's now new people coming in that aren't actors. They're actually there for a doctor's appointment, and so the same cycle goes on, and almost all of them, even like the defiant one that stayed till 5 beeps, right? All of them start standing up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they have no, and like they'll even ask, like they ask the lady, like, why are we standing up? And the one girl's like, the first girl, she's like, I don't know, that's just what everyone did when I came in. And so, and then it's funny because they finally call her back, and now it's a room full of people waiting in the lobby. They're all waiting for doctor's appointments, and none of them are actors. And the first lady that was there is called back. The beat comes up, they all stand up. It's insane how fast we get assimilated to a culture.
Yeah, that's nuts. So I've heard about the story about the monkeys and climbing the ladder, and if they climbs the ladder, grabs a banana, everybody gets shocked. All the monkeys get shocked, and the monkeys would like be physically violent with people who would want to, with other monkeys who want to climb that ladder. It's
Yeah,
crazy to me
and
that
none
it
of them.
happens to
Yeah,
we're
the
humans.
the thing with that story is they would quit shocking them, but they would still react as if they were going to get shocked, and then they
Oh
take
yeah,
all the monkeys that got out that got shocked. Yeah, it's the same thing. But what I love about the three beeps is this ain't monkeys, right? This
yeah,
is people. So when I think about this is water and like the two fish, I'm like, what is so evident to what am I missing? Like, and that's what I really want to get in is to this nuance of situational leadership. But what am I missing that is right in front of my face? And to tell you the truth, I'm gonna make a statement here, and maybe you can, you know, you know, whether you agree with it or not. But I think that's why it's so important because you can become blinded to what's going on in your life. And that's why you need other people to talk into your life because it's so easy to put on blinders. I actually, I was in a class, a training development class, and I was listening to this neuroscientist speak. And he said that, our eyes pick up about 6% of the information that is in front of us. our brains add the other 94%. So think about that. So of the stuff in front of me, observable data, my mind is only picking up about 6% of it. My brain is assigning the other 94% of the data. So I'm in a bad mood. I'm in a happy mood. Like, man, how much are we missing?
Yeah, and not only that, how much of it, if it's just your brain that fills in the other 94%, how much of that stuff is just based on old stuff, right? Old experiences,
Yeah, mental models. Yep.
default thoughts, right? So, like specifically if you're in a bad mood or, even in a good mood and you're looking at something and it's like, this is the happy place or this is, the bad place.
The bad place. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Going back to the armchair expert podcast with Zach Shepard.
Yeah.
So something, we can go along with the video, but something that else that came up this week is I heard this kind of term about generic coaching versus situational coaching. And the idea was, the example they used is, you know what, like a good coach, a good leader, um, is nuanced. Like they know what's going on in your life and they see trends so that they can actually give you appropriate coaching and feedback. And what most of us do, including me, I've done this plenty of times, is give the generic feedback. We give the generic, like, hey, yeah, that sounds like a problem. I had that problem like 6 years ago. If you just do this, it'll work. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that everybody's probably guilty of giving some generic leadership advice, specifically in the Air Force. Mainly, and I'm not bagging on the Air Force professional military education, but we all learn the exact same canned leadership material. And it's just ground up and served differently, across the generations of the Air Force. So all of the cliches, I'm guilty of one last week, fight for feedback. It's true story. It's true,
Yeah, it is.
but it's absolutely, we all think the same. But if you could go back and survey the people that I led, and how many of them appreciated when I would say, "Oh man, maybe just fight for feedback." You know what I mean? Just I'm curious where they would be with that, little nugget of chief advice. Now they might just be like, "Dude, what are you talking about?"
Yeah, I coined this term. I'm sure it's been used. I can become an advice monster, where like someone is like sharing something with me and it's nuanced, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's just like this. Here is all the information that you need. Uh,
Here's all my words.
here's all my words. Like, just do this. You don't need anything else. And I, it seems simple, but like, so a term that was out when we were in was called situational leadership, but even that was like really canned, because understanding the person is so important to understand not just the person, but like the baggage. Like you talked about this earlier, like the mental models that they're dealing with. So um, I heard it explained like this. So our brain, if you break it down into a pie graph, we spend about 10% of our brain's capacity in the present. We spend about 50% of it in the past, and then 40% looking to the future. So something happens to us, like, I don't know, someone says something to you. The first thing that comes up is what's happened in the past, because that's how your brain starts to think. And it goes through all of the patterns, all of the things that have happened to you, gives you an emotion, and then you decide what to move towards in the future. So all of those mental models, like worldview, biases, blind spots, are filtered. And so when you don't know those things about the people you're leading, it makes it very hard to give feedback. And that's why these people I was talking to, like, understanding, like, you have to have a deep understanding of the people that you're coaching or trying to lead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was given a pretty good opportunity at the end of my career to kind of do that. I felt like I had like a niche chief experience because I didn't have a lot of people. I left the aircraft maintenance squadron. I was in an AMU, and a chief had been moved out, or I think she may have retired from a specific location. And I moved in, and there weren't a lot of people. And because there weren't a lot of people, I had an opportunity to kind of like know everybody. And I really wanted to get like a real good understanding of my guys and my gals. In fact, it was probably more gals there than there were guys, specifically in my day to day.
Hashtag Orange
So
Theory.
hashtag Orange Theory. So yeah, so I think it was awesome that I got to do that. But yeah, I think that with a better understanding, and it's kind of hard to do if you're in one of those squadrons or groups when there's just thousands of people or hundreds of people.
Yeah, but
It,
you're not coaching thousands or hundreds of people. Every leader. I mean, if you even look to the Bible, Jesus had 12, right? Like so, like you can't get too many. Yeah. So even
doesn't probably the right number, right?
yeah, well, if that is your faith, if that's the way you go, like if the God of the universe said that you could only have, he could only deal with 12, maybe 12 is a little high for us. Look at like a wing commander. A wing commander has four group chiefs or five group chiefs, or I shouldn't say chiefs, but commanders. So that's who they're coaching, or that's I shouldn't trying to coach through situations, trying to help figure out, gain situational awareness. Because if you continue in that video, This Is Water, David Foster Wallace starts calling out, like, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying with the mental models, like, what is your natural default setting? And so I heard this term this week. Emotions are the interface with which you first deal with the world. Emotions are the interface which you deal with first in the world. I probably messed that all up, but I think you get the gist. What do you think about that?
Well, if it's the first that you deal with in the world as an infant, you probably just feel things and don't know how to verbalize or vocalize those
No, I
things.
don't think they meant that. What I'm saying is something happens to you, and before you can analytically analyze it, an emotion pops up, right? Like, so
Mm.
it is the first interface that happens, because emotions happen, like, we've all been in a situation where our wives have said something to us or our husbands have said something to us. Um, and an emotion pops up before I have words, right? Yeah. Love. It's always love. But so I think that's what they meant, is the first interaction that you have with the situation or whatever. What's your natural default setting in that emotional realm?
Yeah, I like to think if you're asking me what my natural default setting is, I like to think that I'm pretty open to most situations, but I know there are times when I blow it. When someone will say something, I feel like it's a personal attack, or I feel like they're saying it just maybe to elicit an emotion out of me. That might be anger, that might be fear, or whatever. Um, but I like to think that most of the time I attack that from rationality at the very least, but I'm sure that's not always the case. But I can see how first comes the emotion even before I begin to speak.
Yeah. So, and let's bring this back to the Air Force. Like, so how open in your time was bringing emotions into the workplace? I mean, it's the first thing that happens. So, like, yeah, what's your experience with that?
Well, when I was a younger airman, hearing someone scream the F word and throw a wrench across the hangar or across the flight line was pretty common. Less so as I matured in the Air Force ranks. But I always got a smile when you're walking around and you hear someone, just screaming obscenity in a random office somewhere, that, because we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
he just got that email that he's got to go be a DDR observer, and and he or she is sad about that, so they
uh,
express that.
for those that don't understand what DDR is, they get to go watch people pee into a cup for a week for drug testing analysis.
And it's real observation too. It's not any of this kindler, gentler, you stand back by the sink. It's getting in there really and making sure that the deed's been done.
Yeah, if I remember right, they're like, you have to see the whole thing. So
Yeah.
that's how close you got to be. You can't even just see the end. You got to see where it begins and where it ends.
Where the stream begins and where it ends. Yep,
Yeah. So
for sure.
I heard one time someone said, if you're not getting sprinkled, you're not doing it right. Oh, hashtag gross, man. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
I was so blessed that I was never selected to be the observer.
uh,
However, I did get called in multiple times for specifically here's a hot take, Jace, for all those dang new chiefs. Because there's such a smaller pool of chiefs, you get selected for DDR more often. I must have gone and
selected
been
to go
observed.
pee. Right.
Yep.
Yep.
So I must have been observed making a sample. I don't even know how many times my last 2 years specifically,
Yeah,
they
me
must have
too.
got me on the list because I went all the time. The guys knew me by name. They're like, "Hey, what's up, chief? How's everything going? That rash clear up?" And they
Yeah.
knew everything about me.
Hashtag short stuff, right? Like, hey, chief. Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So yeah, man, where were we even going? Like we got we got taken off on the DDR train.
We were talking about that emotional response that comes from getting selected for
Oh yeah,
something.
so the natural like the natural default setting. So when you're coaching, so for leaders and everyone out there, when you're coaching, when you're leading, if you don't understand like if you're my leader and you don't understand my natural default setting or your the emotions that come along with it. Oh, we were talking about emotions in the workplace at the Air Force. And I just remember a lot of the time and maybe is changing a little bit towards the end of my career, but like we didn't bring emotions to work. Like if you were emotional, like it was unprofessional, right? But it's the interface with which we deal with the world first, and so it's so interesting. Like, uh, hey, push all that stuff down and just be analytical. And it's now that I'm a little older, a little wiser, like, that's nuts. That is nuts that and I hope it's getting better, but that we're not helping younger people deal with like, I mean, that's what as a parent, that's 90% of my job is like, "Okay, what are you feeling here? Like, how do you deal with this emotion?" It's really not, "Hey, what's, E equals MC square?" It's, "Hmm, that's an interesting emotion you're having, son. Let's talk through that," right?
Right. Yeah, so I think that when you did experience emotion out in workplaces, it always caught me off guard because we did try, I think, to can that up and be as professional little Air Force Blue robots as most of the time that we could. But I was always, you see it in people's faces too. In some places you go in there and they're just wearing that on their faces and then their nonverbals. Like it's a stark difference to walk into that into the MPF customer service and they've got some awesome tech running the show in there and everybody's smiling having a good time and they're jamming, and then you walk into somewhere else like state services and it's the gym and everybody's just like had it with customers all day and it's just like it's on their face.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it is interesting. It is a dynamic that, and actually, I wrote it down so I could remember it. It was emotions are the interface with which we first experience the world. So it's the first thing that happens, and until we get emotional training right, until we really understand that, like I think we're gonna still have a lot of problems in every area, whether it's the Air Force, because your first emotion, your first reaction to a situation, like, taints everything. Like, that's why if you're like, the boss is having a bad day, let's not go in there. I'm going to wait. And so if the boss isn't good at, hey, I'm having a bad day, I need to work through these processes, like, it's gonna lend itself to bad decision making. And so that's yeah, so when towards the end of the video, David Foster Wallace, says that, the true value of an education is not knowledge, it's simply awareness. What do you take from that?
Yeah, I think that you you definitely have to be aware of what's going on, and sometimes that's not always easy. A lot of us, when you touch on the knowledge piece, a lot of us feel like we know what's going on all the time, but that may not be the case. There's other dynamics going on, and again, it may be that, hey, this is water. This you just may not even realize what's actually happening.
Yeah, and hashtag flex. So Adam Grant in his book, Think Again, fantastic book. I recommend it to anyone. It's a foundational book. He has this thing that he calls the overconfidence cycle and then the rethinking cycle. So I'll mess it up, but the overconfidence cycle is you have an idea, you look for information that validates that idea, you confirm it through your biases, and you're proud of your idea. And so it's something like that. It's the overconfidence cycle. Go look it up. But if you want to look at the rethinking cycle, I got this one down. It's you start with humility, then you have doubt, which leads to curiosity, and then leads to discovery. And what he's really getting at there is don't be so quick to assume that you know what's going on. And I think that's the whole like kind of theme of this podcast is this kind of situational probing, being thinking that you know what's going on, just like those two fish, but you're swimming in water and you don't even realize it. So how do you get? I have some ideas, but I'd be curious. Like, how do you gain better situational awareness? Because, and this is really for the military. I think about this all the time. Like, for the longest time, our communications have been great. So, like, you watch President Obama watching the SEALs, go get Osama bin Laden, right? Like, I mean,
So professional.
yeah, like President Obama could be like, "Hey, SEAL 6, you're missing someone over there." Like, I mean, that's just how our communication goes. And when I was, dealing with Pentagon and things like that, like in the future war, but we can even talk about just in business, like communication will not happen like that. Like the top cannot run the bottom. We get soft thinking that it can, that all of the decision makers at the top can make all of the decisions. But what's going to happen in the future war is, we're going to drop some people off on a beach, and they better gain some situational awareness and move out because they ain't going to have the comms from the top. So how do you get better at that? Like any advice that way?
I would say just listening to your people, not just the people above you, but the people beside you, the people just above you, people just below you, people who are on the front lines, wherever it may be. If you've got to make those connections and listen as much as you possibly can, because as we touched on in the initial podcast, um, very likely there's someone who knows more than you specifically with what's going on right now in the same room as you. Um, you're never going to be the smartest guy in the room anymore. That's you may have been able to do that, you know 5-10 years ago. Elon Musk may be able to pull that off today, but I guarantee you,
No.
if you sit me in the same room with Elon Musk and I have this and he's got his brain, I'm probably gonna win 9 times out of 10, um,
Mm,
with random stuff. 992 times 18. Go, Elon.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
He gives you the answer. You're like, "F
yeah, he
you,
probably
man."
does. He probably knows that. But I think the communication is it, man. I think that you got to listen. Um, I think you got to information is
Mm.
key, really. And the people who are out there on that beach, they've got to want to be able to communicate back up to you. They got to know that they can do that, and it's going to
So
be
not to be hashtag generic advice, because that, hey, listen, and I'm not calling you out or anything like that, but I've heard that for a long time. How do you do that? Like, I mean, in the trenches, like, because I'll put it like this: it is risky. All risk is on the lower ranking individual to speak up. All risk.
right.
And so, like, if he's gonna challenge you or she's gonna challenge you or they think this is bonkers, like, it's all their risk. So how do you create that kind of environment where they, feel like they can speak up?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Like a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about here, I don't know how it becomes less risky for those people, or for anyone really to make kind of a decision and kind of stand by it. And I think that if we were going to get any better at leadership in the Air Force, we'd we'd be there. We'd be amazing at it by now. I mean, seriously, all the stuff we do with leadership, all the professional military education, all the TED talks, all the stuff that we do on a day in and day out, and this is leadership and hashtags and podcasts. If we were going to find the golden egg, man, we would we'd be doing it. We'd be sitting here talking about cycling.
No, but I appreciate that, but I do think there's some skills that you can develop. One of the first ones is, we teach this class kind of at Rice. We call them red arrow behaviors, and I'll go through it with you, and maybe you can give me some advice on what you think some red arrow behaviors are. So think about some supervisors, think about some subordinates that you had, and think, like, why wouldn't you give them feedback? Like, why wouldn't you speak to them? Like, what are some things that would prevent you from, you know, you're the worst boss. Let's just make it easy for you. Like the worst boss you ever had. Like, why wouldn't you give them feedback?
A lot of times, and I didn't have very many bad bosses. I was super lucky in my time in the Air Force with that.
Hashtag blessed.
So I did have a lot of peers who, in some way we were interconnected and we were working on the same projects or whatever. And but say we weren't working on the same project, and you know, I felt that that person was doing things in the dumbest way possible, and I could probably help him or her. A lot of times I wouldn't do it because I know that they wouldn't change what they were doing anyway, right?
So what was the
So
behavior? Was it a past action, or like what were they doing that you were like, they're not going to change anyways?
yeah, a lot of times it was personal too, which is kind of sad to say, but if you've been burned through someone's personality and they're kind of like, "Hey, man, GTF out of here," you're kind of like, "All right, you got it, homie. Good luck.
Yeah, right.
Good luck with that 6-month project that's about to take you about 18 months."
So I know you had great leaders in the past, but was there ever a time when a leader was looking at their phone or looking at their email as you're talking to them?
Later on
Or were
in
you looking at your phone, looking at your email when someone below you was trying to talk to you?
perhaps, yeah,
Perhaps, right?
I'm definitely not,
I did it for sure.
without flaws here.
Yeah, absolutely. I did it. And so that's kind of a red arrow behavior, right? Like, Chief Brinkley, Anthony Brinkley, he said this one time, and I thought it was, uh, I didn't really realize it at the time, but I think it was probably true that, when an airman gets the courage up to go talk to the chief, it's the most important conversation that airman's going to have in it, not in their life, but like in that week or something like that. And when you as a leader, or you as a chief, or whatever, you're on your phone, you're not giving them your full attention, like that's a red arrow behavior, right? Like they're like, I'm trying to pour my heart or my information out to this guy and gal, and they're not paying attention, right? And so, what is it the next time, or as that airman leaves and walks out the room, like what is the next time? H- How how bold are they going to be to talk to you?
Right. So what I did specifically with young airmen, I've actually heard that said before. If a young airman comes up to you, and I'm talking senior airmen and below, and they come up to talk to you because they're passionate about something, and you might not have the time to dedicate in that moment, but 9 times out of 10, you probably are going to be able to stay and listen to what the guy or gal's got to say. What I tried to do is, and it's not a end all be all, but what I try to do is I wrote that guy's or gal's name down, and I just made sure the next week or as soon as humanly possible, I went down to where they were at in their work center, or over or up to wherever their work center was. And I was like, "Hey man, about that, you got any thoughts? You got any new
Oh,
thoughts? Or
nice.
hey, I thought about this, and this is what I think." And I tried to especially if it was positive, right? I tried to give them that positive reinforcement. It's not always easy to give positive reinforcement in the Air Force.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
when you can, just scoop it.
Yeah, I think that's a great technique. Definitely, the follow up will, lead to more. What you're trying to do is just promote more communication, right? Like, and that is filling that little. Uh, I shouldn't say little, but that it's filling their tank up so that they have the courage the next time to come talk to you. Like, oh, Chief remembered me. So, but I think as you try to build that environment where you listen more, um, but I think it really has to deal with dialing down these kind of behaviors that all of us do, and even calling them out, being vulnerable enough to say, "Hey, listen, sometimes I'm task saturated and I don't mean to be, and I am working on that. When you come talk to me, I am working my hardest on it." Just being vulnerable to let them even know that you're struggling with something. I used to always think this, that I don't really trust a leader until they make a few mistakes, right? Like if they're perfect, like, I don't know what the hell is going on, but you're not like that. So, what do you think about that statement?
Yeah, I can get on board with that. I liked the human aspect of my leaders more than anything else. And I wouldn't say mistakes pop out in my mind, but I do remember old Bart Kennerson, just
Colonel K.
the humanity
Yeah,
of 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 that guy was kind of unreal, and he made you feel like family. And you're definitely not going to get the full story from him. You're going to get the full story from him. So
yeah,
he always made time. And I'm sitting here, I'm smiling thinking about it. And it'd be cool to be able to kind of return the favor to some of those guys that maybe I didn't give their appropriate amount of time to. But it's pretty. Yeah, I like the human aspect of people probably the most.
yeah. We should get Colonel K on this. I don't know if we're doing guests or whatever, but he, man, he's like family. He's a good dude. So
Yeah.
I was his group chief, and you worked up in there in the group with Colonel K there at DM. So yeah, he is like family. So well, you know, this is a huge topic that we can't even get into, like into the super deep, deep, deep cuts in 40-ish minutes. So, but I do, uh, I'll say some words and I'll let you finish it off. But if there's anything I want anyone to take away from this podcast, is that how nuanced leadership is. Maybe I mentioned it in the first podcast, maybe I didn't, because I say these things all the time, even when I'm teaching leadership at Rice. Like I get scared when someone says leadership is easy, or like you just need to do these things. Like that to me is the generic advice monster. They got it all figured out. Like nothing's gonna change. This world is changing so fast, and um, I would like you to think about like your child. Like how much do they change if you have kids or brothers or sisters? How much do they change every 90 days? Like my son is a different person every 90 days, and I have to adjust my parenting
Mhm.
to him every 90 days. And we're all like that. We're all growing, we're all experiencing ups and downs in our lives, marriages, divorces, births, deaths. All of these things affect us. And when you, all of those are in that or that 50% mental models of the past that are now affecting our thinking. And so if you think you have someone figured out, you're dead wrong, because they have changed in the last 24 hours. They've learned something new, something's happened in their life. And so if there's anything that I like would want everyone to take away from this podcast is that don't rely on your natural default setting. Like this is how I experience the world and it's the same every day. Because everything changes. And so I would love to get into this topic more as we go forward. We got 50 more of these podcasts that we're going to do. So it's so nuanced and I love this stuff. So, Kyle, you got anything to wrap up with?
No, not really. I would say that I'm probably gonna come with that. This is what I think it is,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that you're there to kind of to cross check me on that. So one thing that I never really liked about the Air Force is everybody's like, oh, I totally agree. Yeah, oh, I totally agree. I like that you can kind of call me on that, and definitely do that. Call me on this because I will absolutely, if there's not a solution, my God, I'll think of one, and we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's awesome.
We all do. And that's a really good take right there. That's why we need people in our lives to hold us accountable. Get back to that neuroscientist. I'm only seeing 6% of the picture. I need my bro to help me at least get up to 12% of the picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And if I have a
absolutely.
team, maybe I can even get up to 50% of the picture. So we need others in our lives that see things differently. Um, but how do you? Maybe we'll get into that later. But how do you dial down that ego to be able to listen, to truly listen, and hear other people's perspectives? And so, yeah, I think with that, you good? Any parting words? A thumbs up for our podcast listeners. He's doing a thumbs up, and he did a little heart thing. So he loves all of you. We love all of you. As we said before, we want to be value added. We hope to bring a little laughter, but hope to the best we can do is maybe make you think a little bit. And so I'm gonna play a little music here, and I'll dance more this time because Kyle called me out in the beginning. If you can't hear it, just understand that I'm not gonna put it in after the editing. Like I'm not dealing with that. So yeah, just get to watch me dance here for a good maybe 20 seconds. So hey, this was episode 2 of Deep Cut Chiefs podcast. Two down, Kyle. 50 to go. Whoop, whoop.
What? Let's go.
I got to turn the music up.
All
Here it
right, I'm gonna
goes.
recommit to this dance.
Jace is going to call me out so bad.
The longest 10 seconds.